Welcome back to my channel. I hope you enjoyed that little clip about my shooting environment and shooting situation. And this video is about the ALPA Pano 12 rosewood, which is the best you can get today in the camera market for high resolution panorama stitching. ALPA is a very special brand for camera bodies from Switzerland. I will of course link their website down below in the info box. And we have here three components. We have a camera body for panorama stitching. We'll go into details in a moment. I have here a lens, and that lens here is from Rodenstock, which is a German brand, delivers absolutely fantastic optical properties. And at the back of the camera, I have mounted my IQ4 from Phase One, which is the best you can get in digital photography today, because this digital back here has the largest available digital sensor and it has 150 megapixel native resolution. In this video, I will explain in detail everything you might want to know about this camera body here. I will show the IQ4 and image quality again. I've shown this digital back before on Phase One camera bodies on my channel. I will link all the videos down below in the info box. And of course, I also want to show you live in Capture One 23 some of the images I've shot and how to stitch them together to a panorama. And then of course, we also touch about image quality. Let's kick off the video. All right, let's get started. As a first step, let's disassemble this camera lens digital back combo so you see the different components. So let's look at these two levers. First of all, I make sure the lens cannot just drop off, so I hold it firmly with my hands. I open the first lever, I open the second lever, and then you see the lens drops off and I can put it aside. And in the middle of the camera body, we now get a glimpse on the sensor of the IQ4 digital back, because that's mounted, of course, on the rear side of the camera body. At the rear side of the ALPA camera body, we have exactly the same mechanics. We have one lever here and we have one lever here. And if I open them, I can remove the digital back and put it aside and get the camera body in its pure form without digital back and without a lens mounted in front of the camera body. Let's look at the camera body first. On the side here, we have a wooden grip, and that's a very nice grip. It's beautifully made, but it's only to carry the camera around conveniently, because that camera is supposed to be shot on a tripod. It's not made or built for handhold shooting. And for the tripod, we have here also from ALPA a tripod mount which is Arca Swiss compatible, and it's very convenient. It just snaps in and then the camera is sturdy on the tripod. We also have here a control wheel, which I will cover in a moment. And overall, it's a beautiful camera body if you look at that, but it's also a massive camera body. It needs a lot of space, and you also need to figure out how to carry this around in a backpack, because it will not fit into your usual photography backpack where you typically carry around your gear when you go shoot with a couple of lenses and a camera body. The mechanical control wheel on top of the camera body is used for a vertical shift. You see this here indicated by 10 millimeter up and down. And it has a locking mechanism, so currently it's locked. I cannot move it, but if I unlock it, I can start to shift in both directions. And if this is not quick enough for me, there's another tiny wheel embedded on top of that control wheel, which helps you to quicker move it. And that is a very convenient mechanism. So I can very quickly shift it in the other direction by 5 millimeter. And then if I get close to where I want to be, I can switch to fine tuning again, can lock it, and then it's fixed and the lens cannot move. And by the way, you see here that the lens is moving. So have a look here. It's really the lens which is shifted. And we will later see that on the rear side of the camera body, the digital back will shift it in the other direction, namely horizontally, which you then use for your panorama stitching process. This is now the rear side of the camera. And on the rear side of the camera, the digital back is shifted via this beautifully built mechanism. There is again a little lever here. And here I have chosen 5 millimeter shifts in both directions. And you also have a scale here, which indicates that to you. So let's try this out. Let's push that lever down and let's shift here by 5 millimeter, and then it snaps in. And it's very solidly built, so you cannot accidentally move the digital back once it snaps in. Quite nice. What you also see here is the enormous range you can shift. So we can go in both directions by 35 millimeter. And you can do this in a very quick way once you get used to the mechanism. And in this way, if your light conditions are changing quickly and you want to shift very quickly without thinking and just use, for instance, 15 millimeter in both directions, that's very quickly done. and it's a very reliable mechanism. I like a lot the way this is built and constructed here. And again, once it snaps in, it sits firmly. That's basically all I wanted to tell you about this beautiful Alpa made in Switzerland camera body. The only thing I want to mention for the sake of completeness are the level meters here on the side and on the top side, and that can be used to adjust the camera for the correct perspective, of course. As mentioned in the introduction to this video, I've shown the IQ4 digital bag from Phase One before on my channel. And if you're interested to learn more about this digital bag, because I will not go much into details here, then please click on the links down below in the info box. It is de facto the best digital sensor you can get today as a pro photographer, and it's unfortunately also very expensive. The sensor is the largest you can get in a digital camera. I can hardly show it here because of that adapter, but you see here a bit the light reflections, and if you look inside, this is really a large sensor. And there is an adapter now mounted here on this digital back, and that is a tilt swing adapter. And you see here a little spare out. You also see here a little scale, and there's a control wheel here, a mechanical one. And if I turn this, I can now tilt the digital back via this adapter here. Have a look here. This is the maximum tilt of 5 mm. I think I've reached it now, and then we can tilt it back. And in this way, I can control in my image composition the level of sharpness even better. And if you're not familiar with tilt photography, there are lots of articles in the web where you can look this up. If I want to remove the tilt swing adapter, there are again these two levers here. It's exactly the same mechanism as what we saw before when I removed the digital back from the Alpa camera body and when I removed the Rodenstock lens from the camera body. And you just pull them out here, and then you can remove the tilt swing adapter. It's simple like that, and now you get an even better view on the sensor here. Let me turn this around, and its larger size, and that is quite nice. But what you also see here is that there is an adapter plate mounted on the digital back, and that is essential to match the Alpa equipment. But it also means that my body cap, originally shipped with the IQ4, is no longer fitting on here because we have this adapter in between. And that's why there are some simple body caps which you can get from Alpa, which you can just mount here. You clip it on, and then the sensor is protected. Simple like that. It also, by the way, fits the tilt swing adapter. Let's mount this back here. So let me quickly get this on. By the way, what also applies to all of these levers is they have a nice soft click when you get them firmly pressed back in the locking position. Let's do this and let's listen to the click. Did you hear the click? And now the tilt swing adapter is firmly mounted on the digital back, and also here that body cap matches, so the sensor is protected and you can carry it in that way. That, by the way, fits nicely in the usual camera backpack, whereas the Alpa camera body, well, you have to find a way to figure that out. Last but not least, let's have a look at this beautiful Rodenstock lens. And first of all, it's a very heavy lens. I come to specifications in a moment. We have here an aperture scale. I mentioned before, this is a focal length of 90 mm, and you can now stop this down all the way, let's say, to f64, which is of course absolutely not meaningful because of diffraction. And in the specs of the lens, they actually say that the optimal working range is f5.6 up to f11. I think it's safe to go to f16, but you actually don't need it. I was shooting my image, as you will see later, with f11. And that produced super high image quality. And then we have here a beautifully built focus ring, and that focus ring is fantastic because it has a lot of resistance. You cannot accidentally turn it, and that is a special equipment which Alpa mounted for me on my order, of course, on that lens when I purchased it. And if you wonder yourself why here is the marking infinity is here so far on the right hand side and I cannot further turn the focus ring here, that's because it's like on some LEICA lenses here. You actually have here the infinity mark, and then you have a line leading to that dash here, and that shows you that you're currently focusing at infinity. So you need to look at this lens if you want to use the metric and the scale here for focusing from the front side in order to see exactly what's going on. And then you can focus, and I calculated for my shooting actually the hyperfocal distance of this lens in combination with the sensor size of the IQ4, and then you get the maximum level of sharpness in terms of wide depth of field, which you can leverage for your landscape or architectural shot, of course. Looking at the specifications of the lens again, there are a couple of remarks I want to make. First of all, I can shift and use here the full spectrum up to 35 mm in both directions. I really tried it. There's no vignetting kicking in, and it works in fantastic ways. And the key of getting this is a large image circle. And we see here the image circle is 120 millimeter. It's one of the largest image circles of a lens in this camera system you can get. My second remark concerns the so-called full frame equivalent focal length, which here in the spec sheet is given as 58 millimeter. And you can calculate this yourself. I've done it here online in Wolfram Alpha, and the result of the calculation perfectly matches what we find here in the spec sheet. There are a couple of more things I want to mention here. First of all, the typical beginner mistake. I remember when I shot Rodenstock lenses on my former Alpa camera body some years back. I mounted the lens, I mounted the digital back on the camera body, and everything was dark. And the reason is that there is another lens cap inside. And if you don't remove it, your frame of course will be dark. I would subsum this under typical beginner mistake when you first shoot with that camera system. So make sure when you mounted it for transport reasons, it's good to have this inside, but then later remove it in order to see something in the live view of the IQ4. And the second remark I want to make is there is a very nice lens hood coming with it that looks to me like 3D printed, tailor-made for these Alpa Rodenstock lenses, and you can apply them here on top, and then you will have less lens flare, no reflections from lights in the surrounding, in particular if you shoot at night. And that fits very well and worked for me very well in that evening shot I'm going to show you now in Capture One. Oh, and yes, I forgot one more thing, namely the remote control, which is really old school here, looks quite nice. And the way you assemble this to the digital back here is you open here the port, and then you get this connected, and then you can release the shot here with your IQ4 remote here. And as I said, looks pretty much old school, but I like it a lot. That was also coming with the camera body and is tailor-made built for Alpa, but with a port matching the IQ4. I'm now here in Capture One 23. It's the newest software release they just issued here from Capture One. And that's the usual software where I do my post-processing for images, raw images, I should say, coming from the Phase One IQ4. And I want to focus on two shots here, on this one and on this one. And you see I shifted here a bit to the left and the right to get a higher resolution than just 150 megapixel. It will be around 210 megapixel. And I also will stitch these images together to a high resolution panorama shot coming from the Alpa 12 Pano. The way to get the panorama stitching done in Capture One is I select the two images here, and then they will both appear here in the preview pane. And now I can go to image, and then on image I can go to stitch to panorama. And then I get another menu here, so I can go here basically to, let's go to cylindrical, and it generates a preview for me. Looks good. By the way, you see here quite some dirt on the sensor. I haven't used my Phase One IQ4 for a while, and I could have made my life much easier if I would have taken an LCC profile before, which needs an LCC card. And then in Capture One, it calculates away any potential lens cast. That's in particular important for super wide angle lenses, but it also removes automatically all dust and sensor spots. The final image then is a quite impressive panorama shot. And first of all, we look into sharpness in a moment and the representation of all the details. But I selected the timing of the shooting carefully. I wanted it to be in the blue hour, but getting these nice light purple colors in the background from the sunset. Second, let's look into resolution. Let me open my calculator quickly here. And let's do a quick calculation. So in the metadata on the left-hand side, it says we have here 20314 times 10656 pixels. And if we look at that, we talk about 216 megapixel. And that is, of course, a very large resolution and enables you to print this image in a very large dimension. And if I zoom in here by the loop tool here, or the magnifier tool, you see this is pinpoint sharp. There are so many details captured in that image. It always takes a second to update the preview. If you look here in the background, this is absolutely clean. Super sharp. You can read even the sign here. There is a lot of detail hidden in that image. And if you print this in large dimension, let's say with a diagonal of 2 or 2.5 meters, even if you get close by, let's say 30 centimeter in front of the image, you will still discover some details which you don't see if you have a more far distance from the image. So very nice. And I like a lot the representation even here on the nearer distance. Because I calculated the hyperfocal distance, which I showed you before, I have a really wide depth of field here in terms of sharpness, and everything is clean and crisp. You also see the nice reflections in the water and how calm and silent the water is. And that's because I was shooting here with frame averaging, which is one of the very special features the IQ4 offers. You also see in terms of noise, this image is just clean. I was shooting not at the base ISO of 50, but an ISO of 100, but with frame averaging and the super high quality of that IQ4 sensor, you have here basically a very clean, very nice, super crisp and sharp image. By the way, in Capture One, you can nicely correct highlights, and you see here they are hardly overblown. It looks really good. It's exactly what you expect from a long exposure, and then on top of it, we have frame averaging coming from the IQ4. Here you get some light trails from the tram or the train passing by. If you look here, the level of detail, the traffic light, and on the building in the background, the German engraved word Ladenfläche, which means showroom, is just absolutely amazing. And in spring, I have a couple of jobs to do in landscape photography, and the Pano 12 ALPA clearly is a fantastic tool if you want to get jobs done in landscape or in architecture. Of course, it's an expensive adventure if you later on cannot sell these images for a significant price to clients, because the digital back is expensive, the camera body is expensive, and the lens is expensive. That's all I wanted to say in post-processing. Let me conclude with another video clip and a few more remarks on how to shoot that camera. In the intro video clip to this video, I showed my shooting environment and the workflow with this ALPA camera system, but I didn't provide any additional hints or explanations. So I want to conclude the video with a few remarks on how to shoot that camera system. And the first one is there is no communication between the Rodenstock lens and the digital back. And that means if you want to get in the metadata the correct aperture value, you can set it here. And I was shooting with f11 as mentioned, so I set it here to f11 and then it's correctly shown in the metadata. The second is if I go to live view and I swipe from right to left, I get here a feature update sometime back, which is frame averaging. And I was using it, which enabled me to get the water surface so calm, peaceful and silent, and that is worthwhile to know, of course. And then if you don't want to go for the self timer, you can always use that button here. Let's take a shot. It's a little beep and then the image is here and you see the enormous resolution and image quality if I double tap and go into the 100% view. And that's basically all I wanted to say. If you liked that video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel, there's always more to come. Thanks for watching, stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.